The Speedster is under 1,000 kilos. It's actually under 900 kilos, which is kind of unheard of. If you imagine the average family car is probably more like 2.5 tons. You are not a car company until you have delivered cars to customers.
Mark Tapscott has launched 3 electric vehicle brands. Tesla in the UK, Lucid across Europe, BYD in the Middle East. Now he's building one of his own, Longbow Motors, a featherweight British sports car going into production at the end of 2026. Sub 900 kilos, £65,000 at launch, already on the front cover of Top Gear. And here's what most people in automotive would not have predicted. There's no in-house engineering team, no factory full of 2,000 engineers. The board is made up of the men who used to run Lotus, Alpine and McLaren, the very companies he's now competing with.
So we managed to create from effectively our drawings from CAD through to putting a fully driving vehicle on the road. And we did that in 7 months.
And that's where the conversation gets harder. Are there any downsides to that? You know, what happens to quality, institutional knowledge, you know, when those people are not part of the permanent setup? Do you lose anything?
That's interesting because I think you can make arguments against all of those points probably quite readily that I have seen and experienced in organizations that are operating together. All I can say so far is that
Mark said something in this conversation about a man called Peter Brock, the designer of the first Corvette, now in his 90s, still working under cars at 3 in the morning.
I'm only actually interested in what I can do next.
This episode is about what it takes to build a British sports car company with no engineering team, a 900 kilo target, and a board full of the people you are trying to replace, where the conventional wisdom says scale, capital, and consultants, and the founder thinks it needs the opposite. This is Why Design. So Mark, welcome to the podcast. Wonderful to have you on the show finally. So we're going to dive in. So Mark, you co-founded Longbow, a featherweight British sports car company that's trying to do what no one in the UK has done since Lotus. You've launched Tesla in the UK, Lucid across Europe, BYD in the Middle East. But before we get into any of that, could you take me back to, you know, that very first test drive of the Tesla Model S? You waited 2 years for that car to arrive. Tell me what happened.
Oh, Chris. Yeah. There is a story there that you know, which is why you've asked it. So I think, like, first of all, the whole Tesla piece, right? Back at that stage, we're talking 15 years or so ago now. My co-founder Daniel had just left after sort of launching the Roadster in the UK, Europe, and then he left to go back over to California, do some more Silicon Valley stuff, and I stepped in to then go, okay, now you've done the sports car piece, that's great. Maybe a tiny fraction of a % of people in the UK and Europe have now heard of Tesla, but most still call it Telsa, or don't even know what electrification or EVs really could or should be. And that's when Model S was really kicking off. So I came in to get that into the public domain, really. And the story really before that was I'd experienced a Roadster. So I was always building, designing race cars and a few other things before that. And that was my passion. And I felt that this is great, but where's this really going? When I look back on my life and career, am I going to be sort of saying, you know, I did something meaningful? And that's when one of my friends, stuck me in a Tesla Roadster, and that changed everything for me. In that moment, I was like, wow, okay. Electrification isn't something for the future. It isn't for milk floats. This can be really, really exciting. So then fast forward a few months, there was a couple of emails backwards and forwards with Elon and George Blankenship at the time. So George was the guy that Elon pulled out of retirement, who helped sort of set up all of the retail with Steve Jobs for Apple. So that's why, you know, Tesla had that very Apple-esque way of dealing with things in that aesthetic in the early days. And then fast forward another few months, there I was. sat there with a laptop, a cell phone, and not much else, because I was what was called an asset light at the time. So Tesla
Yeah.
launched markets in this asset light way, and the title is exactly what you were. You were light on assets, phone, laptop.
Yeah.
That's it. And I was waiting a couple of months for the first cars really to arrive in the UK. So a lot of build up to get to that point before those cars arrived, of course. But 6 months later, when they turned up, we had two very early US spec cars. You didn't want to go touching too much of them too closely, because they're fresh from the factory, and they were pretty close to pre-production. And to get to your point, what happened? First test drive, after having waited a year plus of doing all this build up, there we were. First customer turns up in his Ferrari 360. Obviously trusting that he was a competent driver. He knew what he was doing. Moments later, that very first and only car in the UK was in the side of a lorry, because it was a left-hand drive car, didn't check the mirrors properly. And that was it. I was picking up bits of that car along with the customer at the side of the road. And I forced him to make a reservation at that point, which of course he happily did,
Of course,
as some kind of recompense. So yeah, it didn't. Tesla in the UK with a Model S and X didn't necessarily start in the way that a lot of people perhaps think it might.
No. How long had the car been in the country at this point?
Oh, we're talking a couple of weeks, of which was preparation. A couple of days of that was late night photography in London and other cities to capture the car, finally landing in UK and Europe. And then that's it. The main thing with Tesla in those early days, as it is, I think, with any new product, especially with electric cars, it was about getting people to drive them, right? There's only so much you can say and talk about the benefits of and how they feel to drive. You've just got to get bums in seats. That old adage is never truer than it was for Tesla. So I was as keen as possible to get customers driving as early as they possibly could, just not on the A40 into the side of a lorry.
But it's certainly a way to kind of announce a presence there, isn't it? And if nothing else, get a sale. So
yeah, it was a difficult call asking for the new bumper and wing mirror and all the parts from the factory after so long having waited.
I bet, yeah, it's not like crashing a Ford Fiesta where there's lots of spare parts available, is it? So
there wasn't.
Really, yeah. Well, if that doesn't set the scene for the podcast, I don't know what else. But you told me that you spent a lot of your time getting shouted at by Elon. Maybe that's a bit of an overstatement there, but able to share kind of one of the worst kind of episodes there, and what it's taught you about how maybe you lead things now.
Chris, there is a lot I would love to say, but I also enjoy my freedom. And I think it would be unfair to talk about too much of the really scary stuff. But maybe some of the best moments, most memorable, are kind of some of those one-to-one times that I was very fortunate at the time to have. And I think early on, driving around with him gave me an opportunity just to ask some of the questions about the why, I guess. Why you're doing the podcast, right? The why is one of the most interesting questions. And we talked about physics first principles a lot as a guiding star for how he operates all of his companies. And I think he talks about that publicly quite a lot. So I won't go into that one, but I think something he did share that I shared with everybody else that I met in Tesla was that he gave a lot of freedom to the right people, to everybody at Tesla, especially in the early days. There's a lot of trust. And I think he had to do that because it was a very small, fast moving team. The move fast, break things was very apparent in those early days at Tesla.
Literally.
And I think we're often talked about, what others do, what the rules are, what the laws are, and then what is nature or physics first principles. And we were always guided mainly by that first one, sometimes a little by the second. And if you were to ever say that's how someone else does something, that would be your easiest exit plan for Tesla. But what he did say was that we need people to make decisions. We need people to make quick decisions and good ones. And good decisions aren't always the right ones, but you have the freedom to make those decisions. And so long as, if that decision doesn't go the way we hope it does, you sit down there and you can justify why you did it and the reasons you did it were for the best interests of the company, you'll never lose your job. If you don't make a decision, or you stall, or you make a decision for reasons other than best interest of the company, that's the way you find yourself out the door. And that was with the commercial team that I was in, and I think that was also reflected in the design and engineering, that actually making a few good decisions wasn't necessarily looked upon as favorably as making many decisions, of which some were good and some were bad, because you just had to learn very quickly. A lot of the team in those early days weren't EV experts, because it was a whole new thing at that time. You couldn't find one. So the only way you could become an expert is through failure over and over again and improving upon it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also sometimes I waited outside of nightclubs in London for him, but those are times I really can't talk about.
Yeah, we talked before we obviously press record, kind of some of the things that, put your hand up if there's an area we might need to edit. And I think we were, starting pretty strong early on. But no, it's, Elon Musk, he's got his fans, he's got his, obviously lots of critics. The press, love kind of sharing stories about him, but it's clearly a lot of success. And what you talk about, must have learned a lot being in that environment. Fail fast, being empowered to make decisions. It's I've worked with a lot of companies, I speak to a lot of people in businesses, and time and time again, that inability to make decisions is the one thing you can point to as to why things fall over or don't get done. People are afraid to make decisions. You're always looking for someone else to do it for you. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely. If you remove the fear from those decisions, right? I don't think people are afraid of making decisions. I've certainly not seen that. It's the fear of what happens if you make the wrong decision. That's what stops people from making that progress. And since then I've worked in other large corporates, generally for very short periods of time, because the way they operate can become frustrating. Usually because of that problem, that people are worried about mainly managing up rather than managing the problem itself. And I think that's one of the things, one of the superpowers that Elon had, was that empowerment of the people to get on and do things. And there were a number of times where very junior members of the team would speak up during intense times, whether that's through any naivety or lack of fear, I don't know. When senior members of the team would shut up because they knew it was probably a time to be quiet, they'd speak up, say something, good or bad. It was a contribution, and it led further down towards the right answer. And those people often got promoted very quickly within the company to different positions. So I think living in that world of encouraging quick decisions and bravery has been really good. But that has to be backed up by that physics first principles understanding. And I think the asking of questions was the other thing that I learned more than probably anything else at Tesla, which is there is always one more question you can ask that's going to get you closer to the answer, or a better answer or solution that you're looking for. And so, I'm always asking more and more questions.
It's very rarely on the surface, is it, the answer that you're looking for? You've got to dig a bit deeper, in whatever, even in the realm I operate in. Having this conversation earlier today with my colleague, it's like, if you think you've got the answer, ask again. It's 5 whys or whatever it might be, but it's usually buried in there, the true answer.
And you usually have to ask a few questions before you know which is the right question to actually even be asking in the first place as well.
Yeah, you get lost in questions. It's easy. At some point you have to draw a line and, okay, I've got enough now. I need to move on to the next topic. So. But very, very true. I mean, looking back, was there, you spent 7 years at Tesla. Was there a single moment during that time where you thought, I'm going to build one of these things my own way, going to go it my own one day?
Not during Tesla. Way,
No.
way, way, way back when. So
Okay.
I was definitely one of those kids that was drawing cars when I was very, very young. In fact, my mother just sent me a message just today, in fact, of a car that I drew at about the age of 5.
Yeah.
And then in sort of early teenage years, I was pulling apart motorbikes, always trying to understand how things worked from the mechanical side. Um, but but what I would say about Tesla is that during that time, it was clear from the Roadster being launched that there was always an expectation of a follow-up. And it just never seemed to happen. And there was always this question with myself and Daniel especially is, why? Why is there no follow-up? And then, of course, Elon announced the next generation Roadster, but that was, 2017, I think? And here we are several years on from that. And we're still hoping for that answer. I'm very excited about it. I think Elon's teased us a few times. It's meant to be April 1st this year that we were meant to see something of that.
Right.
And it's going to be a very different product to what we've created here. But what we're doing is perhaps more than just the sports car part. It's an importance for lightweighting.
Yeah.
This is really important across the whole transportation industry. So not just sports cars, not just in cars, not just in vehicles, but when we look at eVTOL and all forms of transport, right? If we want them truly to be closer to sustainable, then making things lightweight makes it better in every regard. So when you take it to cars, it's better handling, better agility, better stopping, better accelerating. You're using fewer materials, so you're using less energy to move it, and that applies across all transportation. So we've always seen that as an important thing because everything's getting heavier, Chris. It's like we've walked ourselves into it. It's a pandemic when a Range Rover of the 1980s is about the same size as a Mini Cooper is today. You realize something's gone wrong.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually because a small scrappy startup with big ambitions to change the industry, but you've got to have those big aspirations really, that big impact. So in the meantime you can make this awesome kind of lightweight car that fills the void of where the second version of the Roadster might otherwise have been. But then you're so right. All these I'm no motorsport or kind of, I'm not like F1 kind of fanatic or anything like that, but I know that a lot of the innovations we see in production cars that every person might go out and buy, they had their origins in motorsport and F1 and so I mean you look at the new BMWs coming out. I've just placed an order for the iX3, and it's it's 500 miles on paper.
What made you choose that car?
So I was looking at the more from a stylistic point of view. I was looking at the VW ID Buzz because I just love the styling of that, and it's just the retro, the romantic kind of retro vibe of that. But then the downsides are the cost. It's quite an expensive car. The range is is woeful, really, in the grand scheme of things. And then I was at CES in Vegas in January, and BMW had a display, and it was, I went to the BMW stand because it was near the conference center, and you got free coffee in the morning. So I went, had my coffee, and then they had the iX3 on display. I was like, that's a nice car. And then just started speaking to the reps there, and it's, they've designed it from the ground up, and you didn't realize that a lot of the EVs, they're out there are literally just petrol or diesel cars that have been, retrofitted with, with an EV drivetrain. So yeah, they work pretty well, but they were never designed efficiently. So what my understanding of what BMW are doing is they've literally kind of designed it from the ground up again, as an EV car, and that's where they're able to get their efficiencies, spread the weight out, get the it's a much bigger battery and the weight there, but you're getting much longer range. But then I hear about BYD with an 800 mile range that's just coming around the corner, and you know, I think for me, yeah, it was partially. Don't maybe I'm just showing my age, but I like I like the utility of a car as well. You know, I like my camping trips with the kids, and you can get a lot in there. And if I don't have to stop one extra time on the motorway to charge up, then it ticks a lot of boxes. You know, so yeah, it was kind of gut. And the guy in the showroom was like, "Well, we don't even have them in the country." Yeah, and I was like, "Well, it's okay. I've seen them in Vegas. It's fine."
I think BMW done such a good job on the design side, especially.
Yeah.
Like back to the i3 and the i8, but the i3 again, like ground up EV design, and they focused a lot on reducing weight, and you see that in the material choice they had. So in the chassis, a lot of it is exposed, and it's this composite material, and I think they were really kind of signaling actually what we think the future will be won by, which is exactly this. Okay, what do customers want? Paring it down and delivering on that. And I think we're at a point now. You've mentioned BYD with 800-mile range or so. That how many car companies today are actually asking the question of their customers, "Hey, what do you want?" And I say this because when you look at BYD, for example, they have the Yang Wang, the big SUV that for some unknown reason can float across the Yangtze River. I don't know how many customers they asked, "Do you need your SUV to be able to swim?" Because the amount of extra engineering and cost and everything that's gone into that, for who exactly? And I think that the auto industry has got so waylaid with trying to stuff as much into a car, whether it's technology or these features, as possible, because especially the Chinese brands, they want to sell on features rather than on, what is the story? What is this car all about? How are you going to use it? And so features and benefits, I think, is fading as a way of selling a product these days, especially a car. And actually asking your customers, what do you want, rather than letting the marketing team win out on a spec sheet.
Oh, huge. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's that, can I carry all my stuff? Is it going to be convenient for me? Am I going to feel good? Because it's a higher end brand. It's an upgrade from my Skoda that I drive at the minute. And is it going to be a nice driving experience? And am I going to have to stop a bunch of times? I think the wider problem there, from my experience, because I've got a Skoda Enyaq at the minute, I love it. 200 in the summer, at least 280 miles range. It's it's plenty. But it's such a stressful experience if you're doing a long trip, if you haven't planned, because you'll go to a service station, and one, it's expensive comparatively, but then it's like guaranteed that you're going to be waiting around, or you go to the one service station where the charging stations aren't working, and then you're then gambling kind of with the range on the next one. Do I go off the motorway to find somewhere, or do I stay on? So I just think the infrastructure is not quite there yet. But yeah, generally, they're the big challenges, I think, that you should be looking at.
Before we get back to the episode, a quick reality check. If you are building hardware, your next senior hire is probably the most expensive decision you will make this year. Get it wrong and you lose time, momentum, and sometimes investors. At Kodu, we work only with physical product teams. No spray and pray CVs, no bloated shortlists, just a tight group of proven designers and engineers who have shipped real products. Last quarter, we filled every role we took on. Average time to offer, 5.5 weeks. If you are planning a critical hire, do not leave it to chance. Find me, Chris White, on LinkedIn, and let's talk.
I think Tesla did a really good job of that in the early days.
Oh yeah.
Building the supercharger network, it more than enabled the sales. It was pretty much the only thing that allowed sales to even occur, and it built this moat around Tesla as well for quite a long time, because it's the user experience. The one thing that people, well, one thing most of the people can only really say negatively about an EV, if you discount sound, because that's not for everyone anyway, and I can give you a whole load of other things that maybe are better than sound, perhaps, and that comes from a true petrol head at heart, is that charging experience. If every morning you're plugging in and waking up, if you're fortunate enough to have charging at home, great. But when you're out on the road, the ability to not worry, I think that is what the Supercharger network really offered people in those early days. And I say that from someone who had to make my own 3-pin plug, quite literally wiring it up at home from bits from America that was sent over to me, and plugging in at pubs or Holiday Inns or whatever else I could in the very early days of moving around. So you can imagine the joy when the first Supercharger station was deployed in UK and Europe. And since then, it's just made such a difference. And I still think today as well, when you look at maybe someone that's using, not necessarily a Tesla, but uses a Supercharger network, just that ability, turn up, plug in, know it's going to work a lot of the time. It's that taking away the fuss and care. So certainly for us, we're doing a couple of things. First of all, we're putting a lot of luggage space into the car. We're making a sports car practical, because you've touched upon there about designing an electric car as an electric car from the ground up is critical, right? Not only because of all the benefits, but it can do so much more when you think that way rather than the traditional way. And the way that we've designed our chassis with this center axis architecture, we can talk more about in a moment, means that we can make the car super practical. We can also make it have the best sort of weight distribution possible, even perhaps better than internal combustion engine. And the other thing we did to really learn, okay, how much luggage space is, guess what? We spoke to our customers. On our board, we're really, really lucky that we have a number of people. So Dan Balmer was former CEO of Lotus. Michael van der Sande was former CEO of Alpine. And he also ran Jaguar SBO and built that. And Mike Flewitt, who's the CEO of McLaren. And so we kind of got the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse almost. Who more could we want on a sports car board? And Mike Flewitt from McLaren, he said one of the best things he did early on was speak with all of his early McLaren customers. And he suggested we did the same. I'm not sure how many he got to speak to, but in the first few months of us, that was a couple of hundred people that we booked one-to-ones with, and we spoke to every single one of them and said, hey, you've reserved this car. Wonderful. Thank you. What do you hope it will do for you? And what features are you hoping for? And how are you going to use it? And we've taken all that into consideration and put that into the car. And the interesting thing that I found most of all was that people wanted far less than we had planned to actually put into the vehicle. They wanted a pure sports car. They wanted things like luggage space. They wanted it to drive really well. They wanted the range that we've communicated. They wanted beauty and a few of these other things, but they certainly didn't want it to be able to swim. So breaking news for you here, and everyone.
It didn't come at once.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't fly like the Tesla Roadster and rocket boosters, and ours doesn't go under the water like a Lotus for James Bond either, I'm afraid.
I bet a few of your five-year-old sketches had wings coming off the car.
There's flames coming out the back. That's for
flames,
sure. Yeah. Which hopefully won't be a feature of any Longbow.
Well, yeah. That's as far away from that as possible, please. With batteries.
If it is, it's a bug, not a feature. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we've kind of I knew it would, but we've definitely veered away from the track that I laid out, but it takes us back to 5-year-old you then, and you're sketching cars. How do you go from that and maintain that interest? At what point did it look like a career, or did you realize I could have a career in this, I wanted to pursue this? Maybe just talk us through that early journey.
I will try and make this as interesting as possible, because I know when people wax lyrical about their history, everyone can drift off. So, like I said, I was always pulling stuff apart. I love cars, love motorbikes. The first car I had was objectively terrible, but I loved it to pieces. It was a Fiat Panda, but not even a Fiat Panda. It was a lower version of that. It was made by Seat, and the back seats were it was a hammock. They weren't even proper seats, and it was 900cc engine, so it could almost do the national speed limit if you really pushed it. So that wasn't exactly, I wasn't living the automotive dream at that time, but you know, I had to learn how that whole thing worked, and I really love that car. Then the next kind of big car moment for me was coming back from university after studying engineering. I stopped off. And I shouldn't have done this because I still had my student debt and everything else, but I knew it was going to be important for the future for me. I stopped off and I bought a Lotus Elise.
Wow.
And I could barely fit all of my stuff in it, of course. And you can imagine how that ended up, because obviously I had no money because I spent it all on the car. So went back to live with the parents. They weren't exactly excited at the decision that I had just made.
How old was the Lotus?
Oh, at that point, it was, nearly a 10-year-old car. So it was one of the very early ones. But I knew it needs a lot of work, and I can work on it, and I can understand it. And that really did, I think, inform quite a lot of my future, because after that, then I was in architecture and design consultancy and all my own stuff at that early stage, and realized that whilst I love all of that and design is a passion, I always kept coming back to, I love cars, I love that automotive piece. And it's that combination of design with technology and a bit of speed, which you can probably tell from the way I'm talking. One of the only things I can do to calm my brain down sometimes is that full focus. So going fast helps with that. So at the weekends, I traded my time with some race teams for them to teach me how to run racing cars, how to build them, what was important. And I traded my time in how to engineer components and design. So we ended up building cars and these kinds of things. And then that was it. Launched my own race car company. And that was it. From then on, really, it's always been about that. I'm definitely stealing from Colin Chapman from Lotus, right? The idea of no bracket being the best bracket at all. Whenever I'd have a new race car for a customer, it would always be that fascination with, okay, how much stuff can we remove from this? And why on earth is that bracket designed that way when it's only holding one thing, and it could hold three things and sit over here, and actually it doesn't need to even exist. So I've always loved that part of design and engineering. And then straight into the more corporate side of things, of that electrification side. And then just realizing that, hey, why have we got to the point where electrification really turns off petrol heads for some reason? And why does it also kind of mean autonomy and less feel? So whenever anyone thinks of electrification, those are usually the things that are all kind of combined together. And actually, just because you have an electric powertrain doesn't mean that it needs to have a lot less feel and driver engagement. It doesn't mean that it needs to be autonomous. And it certainly doesn't mean that it needs to be a really big, heavy, isolating SUV. And it's almost like why isn't someone doing it? But you know what? They're great for that, right? And that's why electrification has gone in that direction, because you're getting a Rolls Royce from 30 years ago in your family car today. But look, we're taking it a different direction, which is make it lightweight, make it really engaging. We haven't spoken a lot about the design of the interior publicly. That's because we've got to introduce a lot of theatre, is what we call it, because we don't have. I was going to say we don't have noise there. We don't have the expected noise that you'd have from an internal combustion engine. So we have to do a little bit more to actually get that sort of the heart racing and that emotive feel. So theatre. We have a gear shifter that sits inside that car, and more about that will be revealed later this year.
Yeah, because
we veered off track again there, didn't we, Chris? Apologies.
No, it's great because I love my electric car. I think every now and again I have to go back to get a courtesy car or something. I have to use a gear shifter and go to a manual car, and I'm like, why do I have to put up with this now? Because the thing I love most about my electric car is the confidence. I can pull away at the lights. I can pull away at a junction. With confidence that it's going to pull away. It's got the torque. It's just it's a bit daft sometimes because it's big old SUV and it's rear wheel drive. So if it's a bit slick, it's take a corner and you're a boy racer all of a sudden. But it's that it will just pull away. Whereas cars I've had in the past, decent cars, petrol engines, and it's like if you've it's slightly wrong gear or you get the bite wrong, you're stuffed, aren't you, at the island, and yeah, I think it's great. I think that the theatre, what you're doing as well, you don't need a roaring engine per se because you've got it right there. How responsive it is at the throttle. It's the actually your head's going back like Fred Flintstone, isn't it? You're off.
Yeah, it's not about replacing something that's missing. It's about kind of adding more to the experience. That means you forget all these other things. I mean, obviously, Chris, it really helps that the Speedster doesn't have any windshield, so you're kind of already getting quite a lot going on into your face anyway. But look, instant torque and things that you're talking about there, you combine those in the right way. And look, I'm not going to say much more about it because as I started at our call, right, I said it's all about bums in seats and experience. And that's what we're really going to do. So once we've got those cars ready, customers will be the first to experience them. And hopefully they'll then be able to tell you exactly what it is I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us, a bit more for those who don't know about Longbow. Obviously, we've talked around it and what you're building. How did it come about? Tell us what you're building as much as you can without kind of obviously giving the game away. But and when can we expect to see the car?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started out with kind of two real missions. One is to change how the earth feels about sports cars, for all of the reasons I've just mentioned. That look, I think whilst there are lots of arguments to be had that electrification isn't the panacea, it doesn't solve all problems. I think most people looking at the science can agree that it's the right step or a step in the right direction at least. So why aren't we doing that? Why aren't Porsche and others going head on into electrification if this is the right thing to do? And we couldn't come up with any real reasons other than they're not maybe pushing it in the right way to customers, or customers aren't asking for it because they haven't had a chance to experience what a lightweight, fun sports car could be, because most of them are really heavy and they have all these other features that take away from the driving experience. So if we want to change how the earth feels about sports cars, we have to do it in a way that makes it exciting and people want to do that. And then hopefully, as with Tesla, bringing out the first, the Model 3, Model S, I think that paved the way. And I think you have to give a lot of credit to Tesla for where we are today in the world.
Huge,
they were accelerating the world's transition to sustainable transport when I joined. They did that, right? And so we're adopting that mission a little bit. But more than that, it's that piece about making all cars lighter and better for people and the planet. So when you introduce lightweighting, that's when we can have that wider impact. So apart from just building the Speedster and the Roadster that we've shown, we of course have other products that are sat there that I would love to show and talk about. You can imagine from 5 years on, we've had quite a few ideas. So there is a product catalog there, but it's also about the technology and the chassis that we have under the vehicle. So what makes Longbow really different, apart from the theatre, and hopefully if any of your listeners have seen the design of the car as well, I think is something that's quite different, is how lightweight we are. So the Speedster is under 1,000 kilos. It's actually under 900 kilos, which is kind of unheard of. If you imagine the average family car is probably more like 2.5 tons. It's super, super lightweight, and that changes everything with the car. So that platform is also something we have created for other manufacturers to be able to use and put their vehicles on top of. So it's modular. It can change shape and size and allow you to go from anything from a small sports car up to something much larger to fit the rest of the family in and do that high torque, slippery surface stuff you talked about at the weekends. So we showed the car for the first time, or the cars, in March of 2025 last year. And we were very fortunate that it seems that other kind of automotive fans kind of agreed with us. We've been thinking about this for about 5 or 6 years. and been working on it in
Yeah.
earnest for about 3. And all that time, Chris, you can imagine, you're thinking, are we crazy? Is this just us? Or do other people really kind of believe in what we do as well? And super grateful and humbled by it. Top Gear kind of stuck it on their front cover, and that was it. It went around because
Nice.
Britain has been historically the best place. I think you could probably argue a bit of Germany and Italy, but the best place to build lightweight sports cars for sure. That's where it all began. You know, when you think about things like the Cobra that went over to America and did very well there, that was, you know, that was a lightweight British sports car that then had a big American engine put into it. So the UK is the best place to do this, really. Not least because of that history, but also because the supply chain that exists. You know, there's a reason why the majority of Formula One teams are based in the UK, but also there's a huge amount of talent. So you look at our automotive supply chain there of certainly tier ones, but also some of the OEMs. It's fantastic. You have your McLarens, you have your Jaguars, all these talented people are all based in the UK that contribute to what we're doing. And we're really, really proud of the fact that pretty much everything in our car is UK made. The only thing we have to really call out is the battery cells. And that's just because we don't really make them in the right volume here in the UK yet, but that's changing as well. And so hopefully we'll be able to have a completely UK British built Speedster and Roadster very soon. And they're going into production at the end of this year, end of 26. So first customers should get their vehicles in not too distant future.
That is amazing. I've just got the website open on my side screen here. And reminding myself
Have you found the reserve
button,
button, Chris?
I can see it there. Yeah, it's maybe next year. As I said to you before, I've got a few trade shows to pay for first. But stunning. I can, you don't need to be a car nut to see the appeal of that, and it's really exciting as well. In terms of from a business perspective, the opportunity to support other brands and have your essentially have your hard work licensed out and support other companies and benefit customers of other brands, and I dare say make a tidy kind of bit of revenue there as well. So fantastic. And it'd be great to have it all manufactured in the UK as well. Not that I'm particularly precious about that. I think a global supply chain makes sense where it makes sense. But no, I was going to ask you how challenging that is, but you've clearly answered that through the supply chain already been there, and the fact that you've got such a star-studded assembly on your board. Surely that's has advantages as well.
Absolutely. But, well, look, the UK is great on this. That when you look at the automotive landscape globally, I think what maybe we have, or the Western world has tried to do, having seen what China is doing, it is almost trying to compete on that. And I personally really believe it's a bit of a fool's errand, right? Because trying to compete with state-backed, low cost of energy, low cost of labor, high output factories isn't something that we're going to win at. And maybe we don't even want to win at it, because when you look at what the UK is good at, it's prestige, it's performance, it's luxury. And we can win at those things if we really focus on them. So that's why what we are trying to do with Longbow is we're not creating another $2 million hypercar. This is not another product for the super rich that doesn't change how the earth feels about anything only for a very few small number. What we're trying to do is create a product that has that prestige, that performance, that element of luxury, but at a price point that as many people as possible can afford. And that's why, we're at the point where the Roadster is £65,000 at launch, but gives you hopefully a whole lot more and offers something that people probably expect to pay a great deal more for. And that was another thing I've always thought, talking about design and my earlier years. I always wondered a couple of things. Why is it that you would go to a car show, like Geneva Motor Show used to be the thing when I was growing up, and you would see these amazing concept cars, and then 3-4 years later, the real version of that would come out from the manufacturer, and it would look almost nothing like the beautiful concept car. that really pissed me off a lot. And actually, it also annoyed Elon. And but he was the one I think that really changed that, because I think he said something very similar. And that's why, the first Model S, it looked quite a lot like the car they actually produced. So number one, don't go creating a cool looking thing that you show everybody and then wait a long time and produce something that's a diluted version of it. So the prototype vehicles that we've shown and put out there already, that is what we're building. We're just making some tweaks to make it even better, in fact. And the second part is, why is it that the most beautiful cars were also super expensive? Why couldn't you have something that was beautiful? You're having a 30-degree curve on something that made it look great on a expensive sports car. Why can't you have that on something that's a little bit lower priced? Why is it that that particular angle costs that much more? And often there are design for manufacturing rules around that, of course. But otherwise, I still don't have an answer to that question, because I hope, at least, what we have produced is something that people believe looks like it should cost a lot more than perhaps it does. And price shouldn't be the dictating factor as to how beautiful something should look.
No, absolutely. I've just specced up my car on here on the website. It's
Which two colours did you go through? Because the two-tone piece was a really important part for us. The duality, we call it.
I've gone for red and red. So it was red and black. I thought that was something, but then I clicked the red and I was like, it looks pretty cool. So maybe I'm just simple things for me, but I've gone for all black wheels. So that'll be the one that I order. Maybe next year, but I can see, at that price point though, and an EV, assuming the government don't backpedal on the benefit in kind, you could be getting quite a few business orders through that, because it's I mean, it's pretty much the same price I'll be paying for the BMW. It's, if I can get a suitcase in there, then you're laughing, aren't you? It's,
we are definitely going to be working with the leasing companies in the UK and across Europe, for sure.
No doubt. Yeah. Very, very exciting. So obviously you mentioned that, the UK is actually well positioned for, for the supply chain. But on previous calls, you mentioned, there's also UK manufacturing is in a bit of a terrible state on the wider piece. So was there any temptation to maybe go to China or Eastern Europe, where, the Asian supply chain is pretty phenomenal now, really, with what they've been doing, kind of almost behind the scenes with BYD and all the other EV brands. Was that never a temptation?
I wouldn't say it was never a temptation, or it won't ever continue to be one, right? I think you have to be a realist with this, that the energy costs in the UK, that's a real factor. When you're actually manufacturing something, the cost of energy really starts to come into that. But look, for us, it's really important that we're building a British brand. And I don't think if you were to launch this without that story, that heritage, that kind of authentic nature of what we are building. This car has been designed by teams that have been involved in things like the Lotus Elise and these other historic cars that are known for what they're known for, because they are designed, engineered, and built by people that have driven on English B roads, that understand that actually you can't just stick a big V8 in something and call it a sports car, that it's about building precision. And manufacturing it here as well is just really important for us, that we're building a British brand, and we want to show that it can be done, right? Despite some of the costs, if you can work past costs and instead apply ingenuity, and also our operating model really helps cut down on a lot of the costs that might exist for other manufacturers, because we lean into what already exists. We can't at this stage share with you, I'm afraid, exactly what goes into our powertrain, but when we're able to talk about it later this year, I think people are going to be really surprised at the level of componentry that's gone into this vehicle, because of our sort of operating model, which is, we call it the SOLOS operating model, the speed of lightness operating standards, which is where we take what is best in the market and we try and adapt that to what we need for the vehicle. And that means we can have hypercar components in our car that give us an edge without coming in at that cost. And that's something you just can't simply go to China and say, copy this and make it for us, please, because it's not the right thing for Longbow, short term or long term. We're building a brand here that's global. A lot of our customers are in America, and I think the rest of the world still respects what it is the UK is capable of doing. So no, we are a British sports car brand and will be.
Yeah, it was only, recent years where Chinese car brands have been, marketed in Europe with their Chinese names, MG being a good example of that. They've been Chinese owned for probably over 10 years now, is it? 15 years? And, for a lot of people, they might not realize that it's, it's very little done in the UK anymore. So, but it's the British, made in Britain, designed in Britain, still carries a lot of weight internationally. I definitely see that. But you talk about speed of lightness, lightweight. It's kind of through your DNA. It's in the DNA of the Longbow and the business. And in your team as well, you deliberately lean or lightweight. So you've told me that you're running it as like 11 to 50 people. Is that kind of perhaps you could tell us about, rather than me just throwing out numbers at you, tell us about the setup of the team and how that is, set up to hopefully deliver on these massive orders that you're going to get or have already got for the end of the year.
Yeah, Chris, there's a bit of pressure on us for sure to get delivering. There's not a day that goes past which isn't, can you update me on my delivery date? But that's great, right? That's the excitement that we've got from people around the world. But no, really, part of that Solus operating model for us is also about having decentralized talent. So look, when you take someone like Tesla, they've built this sort of vertically integrated business, which is certainly a way of doing things and has been proven, of course, for them to now produce large numbers, but hugely capital intensive and takes a long time also to have a team doing that storming, norming, performing piece.
Yeah.
And I think you need that when you're building products like Tesla are, but for us, we're very clear on what the product needs to be. So that is so clearly defined that actually when it comes to, hey, we need some really amazing brakes developed for our car. We want them to be super lightweight. We want them to have these performance characteristics and made in these materials. Rather than building a team that are experts in brakes that we go out, we hire, they sit there for a few months, someone argues with someone else, leaves, and this whole thing takes time to gel together. Instead, we go out to the experts that are already operating in that space and say, hey, this is what we want, design that for us. And that happens super, super fast. And it also means that we can be clear on the things that we need to design and develop and stay focused on them. So we managed to create from effectively our drawings, from CAD through to putting a fully driving vehicle on the road. We think we've done that faster than anyone else, or certainly no one's come to challenge us on that since. And we did that in 7 months. And that's because
7 months, wow.
Rather than having a team of 2,000 or 3,000 engineers sat there all working together on that, we're pulling them together and they're collaborating digitally. So that's a big part of our operating model, is that decentralized piece of talent for us.
Is there any traditional elements of car design in there as well, like clay models, or is it purely digital now?
So I think, and we've gone through this process. So speaking with some experience on it now, that you can find a lot of people that will say you can do everything in the digital space now, that AR and VR is so powerful that you can do everything. You don't need to go near clay or any traditional processes. And to an extent, that is true. You can certainly accelerate the process a significant amount. And again, going from render through to car on road in that short space of time, that was because we adopted a lot of these new strategies and techniques. However, there is nothing that beats seeing something in the real world. But what we would certainly suggest is that replacing some of the clay, you could replace that with 3D printing, additive manufacturing. And we certainly made quite a few components and parts. So thinking about big panels, in fact, like the whole of our first prototype vehicle, the whole exterior and interior was actually fully 3D printed.
Oh, wow.
And that allowed us from going to the virtual world to printing a bumper, a bonnet, a seat, and going, that looked great in VR and it looks okay in real life if we just tweak or change this. And then you can do a super quick iterative change then through into the digital world back into that printed space. So it's a combination now of bringing those digital technologies, but also still having something physical. Nothing is going to beat still having that physical thing to see, feel, touch, and put in place, especially when it comes to things like ergonomics and beauty as well, and proportion. It's my experience has now been it's impossible to get it completely right. You can get 99% of the way there, but you still need to see that real life model in full scale as well.
Massively, yeah. But like I said, there's ways you can make that process lightweight and more efficient. But yeah, I remember having a tour of the MG setup years ago. It's like 12, 13 years ago. And I thought at the time they'd be a lot more modern, up to date, but still heavily reliant on traditional skills of model making and clay forming. And it's such a long process as well to get there. So to get a car in 7 months is no mean feat.
Chris, it really depends on your team as well, right? Because certainly in automotive, if you look at people that are near the top or at the top of those car companies, a lot of them started a lot lower down. So automotive keeps people in the industry, it seems, for a long time. So you imagine if you're a senior designer at an automotive firm, you probably grew up making models, doing clay. You certainly learned it at university. So often if it's led by a team that's done that, then that's what's also passed down. But if you come in with a fresh approach and you have maybe a younger team, or it's led by someone that goes, okay, we need to find a different way, clay can't work, then you just start looking at those different techniques as well. So it's there, it's available. It's whether or not teams choose to use them.
Yeah, absolutely. And on those expert teams that you bring in, you've got an augmented business in that respect. Are there any downsides to that? What happens to quality, institutional knowledge, when those people are not part of the permanent setup? Do you lose anything?
That's interesting because I think you can make arguments against all of those points probably quite readily that I have seen and experienced in organizations that are operating together. All I can say so far is that the only thing we've really missed out on is big Christmas parties, because it's hard to arrange separate teams to all come together, but maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
No, I think really when it's not a team that's all having to kind of fight and compete within the same organization, but they have to work together because they are one's working on braking and one's working on hydraulics. They have to work together. And what we do is we sit and orchestrate that in the middle. So I think it's probably harder to not collaborate when you have the customer that's sat there in the room, rather than maybe simply a manager that you then choose to work up your chain management and do something different, and you have infighting with each other. So look, for us, it's worked really, really well. And it just means that we get to have the best talent. I don't think any automotive company can say they have all of the best people, but we can really go to who we think are the best at design, the best at hydraulics, the best at thermal. We can really do that and bring them in together.
Let's pause for a moment. If you need a contract mechanical engineer next week, the easy option is to pull a list of keyword matches and hope one sticks. It's not what we do. At Kodu, we work exclusively in physical product development. We know what good looks like at senior level because we've spent over a decade in this market. Every contractor we introduce is properly vetted, referenced and assessed for real delivery experience, not just software skills on a CV. We can move in under 24 hours, but we do not compromise on quality to do it. So if you need proven contractor support without the gamble, connect with me, Chris White, on LinkedIn, and let's move properly.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And as you, you get closer, or you're setting up the factory, maybe starting hiring in-house, what roles are you worried about getting wrong? Where is the cost of a bad hire, highest for Longbow right now?
What Longbow will always do is assemble vehicles and own the customer experience. I think certainly when I look back on my experience at other automotive firms, it's that front end customer experience and back end operational capacity or efficiency, and not having those two teams work together. Because you can be great at the front end customer experience piece, but then if operations have never felt the pain of someone on the front line and aren't focusing on solving the right operational challenges, delivery, the communications and delivery with customers, that is the one thing that we're going to make sure we hire the best people that have experience in both areas. You can set up the sort of the sales and delivery process in a car dealership, and maybe you've experienced this with BMW or Skoda or whatever process you went through, where you can go in, you can buy a car, you can meet a fantastic salesperson, and as soon as you've signed that contract, they throw you over the fence to the delivery or the operations team. They don't know you, they don't understand. They then throw you over the fence to someone in service for your aftercare.
Yeah.
And it's that lack of kind of connectivity between them. So a really strong sinew needs to be built up between those teams. And even better than that, your salesperson also looks after the operations side. They're the ones also handing over your keys, and they're the ones making that personal introduction into service as well. I think we've done it both ways and different ways till Sunday in automotive. And that's the thing that we're going to really focus on, is getting great people that are with our customers, understand them, and deliver a good service.
Awesome. And probably not the final question on people, but it's an important one. Anyone listening to this episode, and thinking, I'd love to work for Longbow. What should they know about the kind of person who is going to thrive in your environment versus the kind that wouldn't pass probation?
Yeah, good question. Speed of lightness, I've mentioned it a couple of times now, but I think I spent about €300 on it as our trademark, so I'm going to use it as often as I can.
Get your money's worth.
Exactly. We move really quickly, and we're going to have to if we want to compete. And speed and agility is one of those things that we have on our side. But with that, of course, comes a lack of consistency, perhaps. And a lot of people hopefully thrive in that sort of startup culture. We will always maintain a scrappy startup way of operating, because having seen two examples of very large automotive companies, one had very little money all the way through, and the other had billions of dollars put into it at the very beginning. And the same people working at both of those companies, the way that they operated was so different. One, everyone was creative. They were always thinking around problems, and they came up with solutions that really actually benefited the company and the customer. The other just threw money at the problem, brought in consultants or worked with third parties, and never really got to understand those problems. So we will always operate in the leanest way possible to keep everyone as creative as they can be. So it would never be an easy corporate role at Longbow, that's for sure, intentionally. And I think someone that doesn't just see the role they're given as the boundaries within which they operate. And the only example of that I can give, maybe bringing us full circle to where we started on the call about anecdotes of Elon, is that I maybe stupidly looking back on it now, sat in a car once with him and mentioned, you know what, Elon, here in the UK, people like to hang their suits up in the back seats, because a lot of people travel around, salespeople, they want to hang up a jacket in the back, and there's nowhere to do that. And Elon didn't have that in the car, because there's a whole other story about his mum hitting her head on handrails and all sorts. But to cut the story short, he said, okay, design one. And that was it. And then he chased up with me about 3 days later. And bearing in mind, I'm looking after the market and sales and understanding a whole load of other things, not involved in design or engineering at all. But I ran off to a university. I found a great design student that could work with me to CAD things up, another engineer that could do some design for manufacture. And in about 4 days, we had created this hook effectively that go in the back of the car, and then work with Franz von Holzhausen, the lead designer over in California. And that was it. It was then considered for Model X. So that kind of approach of, okay, we've hired you for sales, but if you find a problem, go and solve it, figure it out. That would be the ideal hire for us. You don't even need to have the experience in automotive necessarily, but you need to have that. How do I solve a problem that no one's thought about before attitude?
It's that
Not asking for much,
curiosity. I'm just going to get. No, but I completely agree with you. It's like kind of go out and just get it done. It's ask the questions. How do I do it? And what are the limitations? Let's go. You're empowered. Amazing. That's fantastic story. What's been your single proudest moment you've had so far with Longbow? Something that's made you think, this is actually going to work.
Well, first of all, Chris, we don't rest on any laurels. We have a very clear saying inside Longbow, which is you are not a car company until you have delivered cars to customers. So we will never consider ourselves until that point. Hopefully that's not far off now, just a few months. But there are a lot of automotive companies, I think, that keep on showing pictures and doing things, but years away from delivering to customers. So that will be the proudest moment is handing over that first set of keys. And that's it. I'm not going to call out a proud moment. Here's something that both Daniel and I are always accused of, which is we never look happy. We're never satisfied. And I think that's a good thing in a way, because there have been a number of points, when we've taken the car to certain shows. The car's going in the Peterson Museum in a couple of weeks' time, and people have stood next to us and go, "Oh, you must be really happy. Like, look how well this has turned out. Well, that's gone great." And the answer you will always get from us is, "We're on to the next problem." And that's the way I think that you need to be, is that you're always looking to the next thing rather than being happy with what's already happened.
You mentioned that you'd listened to Will Butler Adams' episode, and he says pretty much that verbatim. It's because I think I asked him if he was proud of what he's built, and he said, or happy. And he says, "Oh no, I'm never happy. I'm never satisfied. I'm always building, and it's in my DNA." And I think it's for any founder or CEO, it's you're always hungry or itching for the next thing. Nothing's ever enough. But he's really proud of what he's built and his team, but never satisfied. And I definitely resonate with that. If you can look back and be happy with where you've come from and what you've built on the way, but you still, the end point seems a light year away. But no, I love that.
Someone else that I met, that a hero of mine for sure, is a gentleman called Peter Brock. Anyone that's into their cars will probably be aware of him. He designed the first Corvette. He was also the lead engineer at Shelby. So he designed the Shelby Daytona and Cobra. This guy, he's in his 90s now, and he's working with us on a few projects. And I was really fortunate enough at the start of this year to spend some time with him. And by time, I mean, one of the cars turned up in the US at 10 p.m. at night, and we needed to do a whole load of things to it, check it, and we wanted to sort of improve it for the next day. This man in his 90s stayed up all night until 7 a.m. the next day. He was underneath the car. He was lifting things heavier than I probably was at the time. And at that age, he kept going all through the night and then went to the event with us the next day. And he did that because even though all the things he's done, he says, I'm only actually interested in what I can do next. Like what's happening next. That's the thing that excites me. Like I don't look back necessarily on what's happened there. And this man has, he's in the Automotive Hall of Fame for all the things he's done, but he looks forward. And I think that's probably what really keeps us going as well. I wish it didn't filter over into personal life, Chris, because it would save a lot of money on therapy, but there we go.
Yeah, massive. I mean, that kind of leads nicely onto my next question, actually, Mark. When we prep
Do
for
I
this
have therapy?
call,
Yes, Chris, often.
well, yes, cliffhanger. Tune in next time. But no, you mentioned you've been traveling a lot. So when we spoke a few weeks or months ago to prep for this, you packed a bag 7 months prior, and you've not unpacked it since that time. I don't know if that situation has changed, but um, what does that kind of full throttle like lifestyle kind of cost you? You mentioned you're meeting with investors and Premier League footballers in Dubai nightclubs. It sounds all lovely and glitzy, but there's got to be a cost to that.
First, if I was to turn my laptop round, I would show you the very same bag that has still the same clothes in it.
Yeah.
What to say? I think anyone that gets to work on the thing that they are passionate about and have been all their lives, you have to be respectful and feel lucky for doing that, right? I think there are many times where I thought, maybe I won't get the opportunity to do this. So now I'm living that. The hardships that come with that, which, look, a lot of family, friends, life, it does suffer. But you're seeing the progress. And there is a point in the future where that bag will be unpacked and there'll be some slightly more settled life. It'll be unpacked in a factory on a blow-up bed that I'll be sleeping on, no doubt. But look, I'm just very fortunate to be able to work on something that I'm really passionate about and needs to be done. So no, the bag will remain packed, and I'll keep a smile on my face until it's done.
Amazing. Well, we're coming towards the end of the podcast. We've gone over time, but I could talk to you for hours, Mark. I think it's there's clearly so many more stories there that we've just scratching the surface on. But obviously there's a big milestone coming. Towards the end of this year, it's really exciting. But what are you most excited about? Over the next 12, 18 months.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to a whole load of places. We're showing the cars off. We've got a lot of interesting testing to be done. So spending time behind the wheel is something I always look forward to. But I'll just take it back to that kind of not the I'll say end goal, Chris, but after a conversation we've just had, it's the next goal, which is the handover of the first vehicles, and that's when we can maybe finally smile for a brief moment, as long as nobody sees us, and said, we've created a car company, and then we start working in earnest on the next product lineup. So really excited actually to show people what comes next. It's a really difficult thing to do when you've got something and you're building it, but what's coming next. And it's easy to stay focused, but it's very hard not to drift off and get a little bit distracted every now and again in dreams and just want to talk about it and show people. So looking forward to delivering cars towards the end of the year and then being able to show a little bit more skirt, as they say, next year to everybody.
How many, if you're able to share, how many cars have you got ordered so far?
We still have some cars available if people want to place reservations. But yes, we're very fortunate that the factory is going to be kept busy for quite some time once it starts.
Good. That's great to hear. It's great to see British design, British success stories. And I look forward to seeing Roadsters on the road, driven by the fleet of business owners and salespeople up and down the country, no doubt.
I'm going to have to put coat hooks in the back of these cars now on. I've said all of that.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's not coat hooks in the back after the Elon Musk story, I think
exactly.
Take anything from this podcast. There's the lesson. But we're gonna wrap up, Mark, on quickfire questions. So I'm going to throw a few at you. Just say the first thing that comes to mind. So first one. A little bit cheeky, wrap it around to the beginning, but the most important thing you learned from being shouted at by Elon Musk?
You don't always have to respond quickly.
I like
Respond with a considered
intentional
answer.
respond. Yeah.
Yes.
Love it. One thing you look for in every engineer you hire?
The ability to talk through a problem that they have solved down to the tiniest detail, because then you know they were actually involved in solving that problem.
Brilliant. A car that changed your understanding of what lightweight means?
It's going to have to be that Lotus that I foolishly
Number
got.
one.
Exactly.
All right, brilliant. The worst piece of advice that you've been given about starting a car company? And I bet you've had lots of advice.
You should start a car company. It's not an easy thing to do, right? It's one of the most complex things when you've got B2C, B2B sales, you've got service, you've got parts, distribution. It's a challenging thing, but look, we've done it about 7 times over now. So we're kind of going through the motions on it and adding just the best parts of what we learned.
Yeah, absolutely. So we haven't really touched on this in the episode, so this is a bit of a bonus feature, but you spent some time making vegan ice cream in part of your career, I believe. So something you learned from making vegan ice cream that you've applied to building cars?
Oh, wow. You're taking me on a trip down memory lane there. The sitting at home thinking that beetroot and lime is a great flavor because a few of your friends tell you it is, and then trying to push that onto the market, not such a good idea. So lesson learned is speak to your customers and take as much much good advice from your customers as you possibly can before you force a product on people. I know.
Beetroot
that
and
face
lime.
says it all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'm just trying to.
But no cows were harmed in the process. So.
Well, no. I mean, I don't know if that's a win. But any final one? No, sorry, I've got 2 more. Any product that you think is quietly world class in its engineering?
It's certainly not Apple AirPods, because this one's been failing me a lot throughout our conversation. There are so many. Having studied design, I'm just going through all of the things, the products that I loved and picked out.
It's the underrated ones, the underdogs.
Okay. This isn't going to be a good answer, but it is the thing that keeps coming to mind, and I've forgotten the designer, which is going to really haunt me now. But the rocket-shaped lemon squeezer, that thing was a really great design and super iconic, and it does so much more than simply just squeeze lemons, and it really kind of set a tone for me in some of my design language as well.
Yes.
If you can help me out with the Googling now.
Is it the Alessi?
Alessi, that's exactly it.
Yeah,
the Italian design house.
Juicy Salif.
They do a whole load of really interesting sort of kitchen products that are fun, quirky, and usually have more than one use to them. And I think that's really important.
Stark one, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that is an iconic design. It looks like something from War of the Worlds. Good answer. And I think we might intentionally leave the pause in there just to build the suspense as well in the final edit.
It's a terrible answer, Chris, but it's a truthful one.
Yes, absolutely. Final question. Your default move when something goes wrong on a Friday afternoon?
Interesting that things can go right on a Friday afternoon for some people. Usually, speak with the team. I think with the small team that we have, when it comes to engineering or other sides, it can usually be solved a lot quicker with a couple of other heads coming together.
Yeah.
And also on a Friday afternoon, who better to share it with than someone else? And hopefully, if they're already at the pub then you're going to get an even better answer than the one that I'm going to come up with, and no doubt sat in front of the laptop receiving that problem.
And it's very cheap therapy as well, isn't it? The pub, so it's yeah,
it used to be
download. Used to be, yeah. And if you're, I think you were in Dubai when we last spoke, so definitely not a cheap therapy there. But but Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and recounting these stories, going through your journey there, and I'm genuinely excited about what you're building and again seeing the cars on the road. I've still got it in front of me here. It is the render here anyway is stunning in the red on red. So that would be my choice. But anyone that's interested in finding out more about Longbow Motors, getting in touch with yourself, whether it be about ordering a car, helping being part of the next car, or just being part of that kind of wider community, what's the best way for them to find out more or reach out to you?
Absolutely. We're not out there. Might sound like a strange thing, but we're not out there grabbing at customers as best we can. Actually, what we're trying to do is create more of a movement or a group of people around sort of lightweight British sports cars, the enjoyment of driving, the future and what it should be. And we bring those people into what we call the guild. So we'd welcome anyone to go to longbowmotors.com, and you can sign up for our newsletter and you hear all about our events. And that would be the best way to stay in touch with the things that we're doing. And of course, all the usual social media channels that we're on as well. But we don't over communicate, Chris. We build quietly and then hopefully surprise people at the end.
Amazing. Oh, it's all lightweight, isn't it? So it's fantastic. Well, Mark, thank you again for your time. Absolute pleasure having you on Why Design.
No, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Why Design. If this episode gave you some new ideas, share it with someone in your team who'd find it useful. And follow the show so you don't miss what's next. And if you're building a product team or looking for your next challenge in design or engineering, that's exactly what we do at Kodu. We help companies hire smarter and faster and help great talent find work that actually fits. I'm Chris White. Connect with me on LinkedIn and let's keep raising the bar for design leadership. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep asking, why design?